love for us, how vast beyond all measure, that He should give His only Son to make a wretch His treasure. How great the pain of searing loss, the Father turns His face away, as wounds which mar the chosen one bring many sons to glory. Behold the man upon the cross. Behold the man upon a cross, my sin upon His shoulders. Ashamed I hear my mocking voice call out among the scoffers. It was my sin that held Him there until it was accomplished. His dying breath has brought me life. I know that it is finished. Boast in anything, no gifts, no power, no wisdom, but I will boast in Jesus Christ, His death and resurrection. Why should I gain from His reward? I cannot give an answer, but this I know with all my heart, His wounds have paid my ransom. Why should I gain? Why should I gain from His reward? I cannot give an answer, but this I know with all my heart, His wounds that paid my ransom. Your wounds have paid my ransom. Here is love, vast as the ocean, loving kindness This is our only hope. Here is love vast as the heavens, countless as the stars above, are the souls that He has ransomed, precious daughters, treasured sons. We are called to feast forever on a love beyond our time. Glorious Father, Son, and Spirit, now with man are intertwined.
Laundry Love kind of got started, I guess, around 2005. Our group had been meeting for probably 6-7 months, and this Laundry Love idea came up, and I said, well, I'm just going to throw it out to our group and see what they think.
We kind of talked about this a little bit. He kind of mentioned some things about this thing called Laundry Love, and I'd never heard of it before. And, he kind of explained to us what it was all about. Going out, we were going to try and find a laundromat that would allow us to come and do laundry for people.
We said, hey, let's just run with it. This is a great idea. It's a great way to love on our community, to give some of the blessing that we've received, give that back to the community as well. Basically, the last Saturday of the month, we show up here. It's mainly our small group, our little community group, and we bring a jar full of quarters. Anywhere we may spend $50 to $75, and we just kind of go through and just pay for laundry for people. No questions asked, no requirement. Show up, and we're going to pay for your laundry.
My favorite part is watching the faces on people when you ask them if you can do their laundry, and they look at you like, are you nuts? Why would you do my laundry? There's always a catch. Here there is no catch. We're doing it because we want to do it. We're doing it because we like doing it. We love meeting the people.
First night we were in here, we sat here for 30-45 minutes before anybody showed up. And then all of a sudden a lady came in and she started bringing more and more laundry in. We said, well, we've got the money, let's just help her. Before we knew it, we had done 15-20 loads of laundry for her. And just had a great time talking with her, enjoyed, she was talking with all of our group. And towards the end of the night, as she's finally finishing her drying and getting things wrapped up, she said, you don't know what a blessing this has been for me. She said, I came in here and I think it was 20 bucks in her wallet. She said, I've put up laundry for the whole month just because it's either do laundry or feed my kids. She said, so I've been putting off laundry.
Here it's not about me. It's about the people that walk in here on a nightly basis on a Saturday night when we come and do Laundry Love. All of a sudden, I'm not thinking about my world anymore. What my problems are. It's focused on them.
We may have 5 people in here that we help. We may have every washer and dryer full. And either way, we come out of here. I just come out of here just overjoyed with just being able to help people and show them some compassion and love.
When it came to our small group situation, we're actually practicing what we're either being preached or what we preach. In a lot of cases, that's a rarity. You can do it once, you can do it twice in a year. We do it, 12 times a year.
People in our group have come to realize that we are called to share love and to go out into the world. It's not that we're going to get together in our holy huddle in our living room and meet every week. So it's just great that the people in our community group have caught that vision as well, that they want to be out reaching the people and caring for their needs, and that's kind of where Laundry Love came from.
There's nothing wrong with that.
Hello, church. We are on to week 8 of our 9-week series through the major themes of the book of Proverbs. We are looking at today, we seek to be wise in God's eyes, wise in our living. We need to be loving. Now, love is a word that can garner a lot of emotions, a lot of thoughts, a lot of experiences, and the Bible speaks about love throughout it. I mean, the Bible is basically a love story of how much God loves us. In spite of our rebellion, our mistakes, our folly, our rejection of Him, God is pursuing to reconcile, to love us, to show us His love, and to have us be loving to Him and to others. So that's what we're going to be looking at today. Before we jump forward, when I was trying to think about this passage and about love, I read this passage, it was the last message before, but it was a passage from Deuteronomy 6, which is the Shema of Israel, this prayer of Israel that Moses leads them through. And often we talk about it, Jesus references this as kind of the greatest command is to love God with all your heart, mind, soul, and strength. But as I was reading the entire chapter, something caught my attention. As much as we are kind of commanded to love, which is our first point, love is command, there's this balance of fear of God and love. So how do we balance fear and love? Those are usually two things we don't associate together. Those aren't things we usually put as synonyms together. And so I was thinking about this. I thought about the ocean. I love the ocean. Ever since I was a kid, I loved playing in the sand and swimming in the water and boogie boarding and body surfing and doing all this fun stuff in the water. But one thing I was repeatedly told again and again was don't turn your back on the ocean. You need to have a fear, an awe, a respect for the mighty power of the ocean. As much as you love it, it can crush you in a heartbeat. As much as it can give you joy and pleasure, it can turn into scariness and despair. I remember, being rolled up in waves many a time, wondering which way is up, what's going to happen, and then you pop through, and oh man, that was a close call. Other times you catch that perfect wave, and you're just able to ride and enjoy it, and just have all this amazing fun, and this love experience can flourish out from it. But there's this balance of fear and love. Now, I know comparing God to the ocean and surfing are not exact equals, but it was just what came to my mind as we think about fear and love. So I want to dive in once again to take time, encourage you to read all of Deuteronomy chapter 6. I've kind of picked some excerpts here, and so I want to read through this and just see how much we are commanded to love and commanded to fear God. And so let's pick up here. So starting in Deuteronomy chapter 6, verse 1 says this: "Now this is the commandment, the statutes and the rules that the Lord your God commanded me to teach you, that you may do them in the land which you are going over to possess it. And you may fear the Lord your God, you and your son and your son's sons, by keeping all his statutes and all his commands, which I command you, all the days of your life, that your days may be long. Hear therefore, Israel, and be careful to do them, that it may go well with you, and that you may multiply greatly, as the Lord, the God of your fathers, has promised you, in a land flowing with milk and honey. Hear, O Israel, the Lord your God, the Lord is one. You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your might. And these words I command you today shall be on your heart." Now drop down to verse 13. "It is the Lord your God you shall fear. Him you shall serve. And by his name you shall swear. You shall not go after other gods, the gods of people who are around you, for the Lord your God in your midst is a jealous God. Lest the anger of the Lord your God be kindled against you, and he destroy you from the face of the earth. You shall not put the Lord your God to the test, as you tested him at Manasseh. You shall diligently keep the commands of the Lord your God and his testimonies and his statutes, which he has commanded you." Verse 24. "And the Lord commanded us to do all these statutes, to fear the Lord our God, for our good always, that he might preserve us alive as we are this day. And it will be righteousness for us if we are careful to do all his commandment before the Lord our God, as he commanded us." Now, in this abbreviated version of chapter 6 of Deuteronomy, what stood out was once again this combination of fear and love and commandments and obedience, right? That if we have a proper love of God, it is based on a fear, a respect, an awe, a willingness to do what he says. And then he gives us all these commands. It's like, okay, if you really love me, it has to be more than words. You need to do what I tell you to do. Because ultimately it shows us that we love God, that we love ourselves, and that we'll love others, because all of God's commands are for our betterment, are for our good. So we need to listen to it and to obey it. But it doesn't just stop there. Once again, we'll see Jesus reference this is in Mark 12, 29, and 31. So this is what Jesus says in response to being asked, what is the greatest law? He quotes from Deuteronomy 6. And so we'll pick back up again just for a reminder, a reiteration of how important this one passage is. So Jesus answered, the most important is, hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one, and you shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your mind, with all your strength. But then he continues, the second is this, you shall love your neighbor as yourself. And he concludes, verse 31, there is no other commandment greater than these. Once again, this isn't God's suggestion that you fear him. This isn't God's preference that you may apply these things. These are commands that we are to love God and to love our neighbor as ourselves, or to love other human beings as ourselves. But the New Testament carries on. The Apostle Paul and the Apostle John both say this in their letters. So in 1 Corinthians 16:14, this is what Paul tells Christians to do. Let all you do be done in love. That's a command that we are to love. Love is to be put into action. And then 1 John 4:8, the Apostle John tells the church this, anyone who does not love does not know God, because God is love. Listen, if we are calling ourselves Christians, do we love God? Do we love others? Because Paul or John's quick, succinct statement here is if we don't love, we don't really know God. And if you don't know God, then you are not saved. See, love is a command. It's for our benefit. It's good. It's great. But God still has to tell us to do it. And so do we fear God? Do we love God? Are we seeking to obey his commands? If we want to be wise, as God tells us to be wise, we need to be in his word. We need to be praying. We need to be in Christian fellowship so that we can be guided, corrected, and put our love into action. I think of the military. Now, I had the privilege of working at a church plant by a military base for a few years, and the military chain of command is pretty much that. It's a chain of command. So if you are a private, if you are kind of the lowest rung on this chain of command, you are just told what to do. You may not understand all the commands. You may not like it. It may be difficult for you. But your trust is that the chain of command is good and that whatever you're told to do is for the greater good, is to achieve the objective that those in charge have put into place. So as we go about our lives, sometimes we may be called to do things, commanded to do things by God that we might not think are easy. We might not think go with what we want to do. Maybe countercultural. We may think it may cost us financially. It may cost us with the relationships. It may cost us with our reputation, or so we think in society. But if we follow these commands, we realize they are commands from God. We just need to be obedient. Now, it kind of seems strange. We think, well, loving is an easy thing to do, right? It shouldn't be hard for us to be commanded to love. But as we continue on, as we look through some more Proverbs, some other passages, we're going to see that, once again, love is not always easy. And love is not just an emotion. Love can be challenging. Love can be sacrificing. Love can cost you a lot. Yet we are called to do it. And so my hope is, as we once again do this quick overview here of make sure that you love God, that you have a proper fear of God. And if you have those two things, do you desire to be obedient to God? Do you realize that he has given commands? God is not a sidekick that we pile around with us and he kind of helps us through our problems. He is the one in control. He is the commander, the leader, the boss, as you were. And so what he says we need to do, regardless if we think we agree with it or if our society says it's something you should do, God is God. And our fear and love of him should drive us to be obedient, to love him, and to love others. All right, we're going to look at love being put into action next. All right. Our church, we've looked at the fact that love is a command, that we are to fear God and to love Him. One of the things I forgot is we've been looking through Proverbs in our first lesson on this topic. We talked about being wise and fearing the Lord. That's what Proverbs 1:7 talks about. And so even our desire for wisdom is founded in a fear of God. So next we're going to look at love is commanded. Now love is action. Love is action. We often say, like, I might love pizza, or I might love ice cream, or I might love the beach. All right, those are definitely true statements for me. I do love those things, but that is not necessarily what biblical love is. Once again, it's not just things that bring me pleasure, bring me joy, but love is an action. It's a choice. It's seeking usually the betterment of someone else is truly love. And we're going to start off, Proverbs speaks a lot about this. As you recall, if you've been watching through this series, that Proverbs is a collection of information, of wisdom, wise sayings, of instruction for the young rulers in training in Israel around the time of Solomon. So he collected these things, he said these things, so that the ruling class can lead the nation wisely. So as they're talking to society on how things need to be ruled and played out and done with, we're going to see that love is an important component of this. Love means seeking the betterment of others. And so I'm going to do a quick reading here because there's a lot of verses that cover this topic about, once again, even loving those who are needy, loving those who are poor. I didn't include all of them here for time's sake, but just to give you a sampling, there's quite a few. So let's read straight through this and we'll move on. So Proverbs 19:17 says, whoever is generous to the poor lends to the Lord, and he will repay him for his deed. Proverbs 22:9, whoever has a bountiful eye will be blessed, for he shares his bread with the poor. Proverbs 14:21, whoever despises his neighbor is a sinner, but blessed is he who is generous to the poor. Proverbs 14:31, whoever oppresses a poor man insults his maker, but he who is generous to the needy honors him. Whoever closes his ear to the cry of the poor will himself will call out and not be answered. Proverbs 31:9. Open your mouth, judge righteously, defend the rights of the poor and needy. Proverbs 31:20. She opens her hand to the poor, she reaches out her hands to the needy. Proverbs 25:21-22. If your enemy is hungry, give him bread to eat. If he is thirsty, give him water to drink. For you'll heap burning coals on his head, and the Lord will reward you. Right? All these components of helping others, helping the needy, helping the poor, being generous to them, lending, giving, is all an expression of love. Why are we to do this? Well, because we're commanded to do it. We're told that even if we do this, or if we don't do this, if we don't seek to help or don't to heed the cry of the poor, that our own cries will not be heard, either by others or by God. So can we have compassion? Can we have diligence? Can we have love and shown to those who are poor, who are needy around us? Once again, this is a call for wisdom. So this doesn't mean you necessarily have to give everything you have to anyone who ever asks, right? There's wisdom in knowing when to help and when not to help financially or whatever it may be. Sometimes, once again, a great help to someone is just sitting and listening to them. It may not be a financial means of you helping them, but do you at least have a heart? Do you have a compassion to see how you can help someone else? Once again, this has to be an overflow of our realization that God has helped us. God has blessed us. God has given us His love. And so can we offer an extension of that love to those around us? But not just Proverbs speaks about love. Once again, the New Testament continues it as well. So for in 1 John 3:16-18, it says this, by this we know love, that He, being Jesus, laid down His life for us, and we ought to lay down our lives for the brothers. If anyone has the world's good and sees his brother in need, yet closes his heart against him, how does God's love abide in him? Little children, let us not love in word or talk, but in deed and in truth. Once again, John does this great comparison. Look, Jesus laid down His life for us. So how do we love and serve one another in light of this amazing love that God has given us? Is we need to help each other. We need to give and serve and support each other. We see this is even a testimony in the book of Acts in chapters 2 through 4 of how the church in Jerusalem spread and grew. Was they were living differently. They were living sacrificially. They were living to meet each other's needs and to help each other. And that was different than what everyone else in Jerusalem was doing. I think a church that loves like this will reap the same benefit. There could be the same revival in our town if we continue to grow in our love and support and help of one another. So once again, talk is cheap. That's what John wraps up there. So let's love, not just in word or talk, but in deed and truth. The note kind of talking about love in action is complete without looking at 1 Corinthians 13. So verses 4 through 8 says this: love is patient and kind. Love does not envy or boast. It is not arrogant or rude. It does not insist on its own way. It is not irritable or resentful. It does not rejoice at wrongdoing, but rejoices with the truth. Love bears all things, believes all things, hopes in things, endures all things. Love never ends. Right? These are all action statements. Can we love like this? Then John 13, 34, 35. This is Jesus speaking to his disciples. Once again, we talked in our last point about that we're commanded to love. And that wasn't just in Deuteronomy, not just to the Israelites from Moses. This is what Jesus says to everyone who is a follower of his. A new commandment, once again, a commandment, not a suggestion, not a tip, a command. A new command I give to you, that you love one another, just as I have loved you. You also are to love one another. By this, all people will know that you are my disciples if you have love for one another. Oftentimes, churches get called out for hypocrisy, for being a clique, or for other things where people do not feel loved or loved by the church. How sad. But once again, this is the beauty of how we can correct it, right? We can show genuine love by loving one another. And Jesus promises the world will know you're my disciples if we love like this. Then Jesus continues on to John 15, 13, speaking about himself and encouragement as an example for us. It says this: greater love has no one than this, that someone lay down his life for his friends. Will we love like this? Will we put love into action? Now, looking back, I probably should have scheduled this sermon last Sunday when it was Valentine's Day, but hopefully just thinking about love in the month of February, we can do better at living this way. What's also amazing is it's not just a biblical principle. There's a Swahili saying that says, love has to be shown by deeds, not words. There's a rock ballad by the band Extreme called More Than Words that once again expresses the same thing in a love relationship, but just that it's cheap and easy to speak love with words, but to actually put love into action is where the rubber meets the road, where true love can be seen. So as we live out our life, can we do that? At the beginning of this message, I put in the little video about laundry love. Once again, this was just a tangible way that one church's small group decided to show love in a physical, meaningful way to their community. Is that something you could do? Is there a different way? Is there a different need? Is there just some way that we can show love in a tangible, physical way to those around us and share the gospel? Once again, the most loving thing we can do, we'll get into this into actually next month's series, is sharing the gospel with people. We meet some physical needs as a bridge, as a doorway to show and express love so we can share the ultimate message of love, which is the fact that God loves them, that he sent Jesus to him. Alistair Begg has this quote, and I'll finish this section with this. It says, the fact that you are a walking compendium of biblical knowledge does not mean you know God. The fact that I can preach or teach doesn't mean I know God. There's only one truly evidential sign, and the sign is love. Will we love as a proof that we are saved? And we can't really love the way God wants us to love unless his love is flowing through us. So let's consider that. Let's make sure that we are depending on God and allow his love to be placed into action for our own benefit. And we're going to wrap up with a quick final application of love. All right, church, our final point, we looked at love is commanded for us as Christians. We looked at if it's commanded, then what is it? Love is action. Love has to be placed into work. The last thing we're going to look at three passages from the book of Proverbs that deal with another aspect of love, and that is correction. We often don't like to think about being corrected or having to correct somebody, but it is an important component of life. As we've been going through this series in Proverbs, we've been humbled by the fact that we do not know everything. There is wisdom that we have to gain. And so, as we go about obtaining wisdom, there's going to be times where we do wrong. We make wrong choices. We behave wrongly. And so there has to be correction. And to truly love means to truly correct, because the benefit for that person is there. And so will you be willing to accept correction? Will you be willing to give correction? So as we jump in, let's look at Proverbs 3, 11, and 12. It says this, "My son, do not despise the Lord's discipline or be weary of his reproof. For the Lord reproves him who he loves, as a father the son in whom he delights." Once again, the more you read the Bible, there's going to become times where you might not think you're doing anything wrong. And you're going to read a passage and God's going to use it to correct you, to convict you. And will you be humble enough to accept his love, his discipline, his reproof, so that you can do what is right and make that correction? Other times you're going to suffer some consequence. Some action is going to come back negatively to affect you. And you're going to realize, okay, what I did was wrong. And so can you accept that loving reproof of God and make the proper correction? Proverbs 9, 8, and 9 says this, "Do not reprove a scoffer, or he will hate you. Reprove a wise man, and he will love you. Give instruction to a wise man, and he will be still wiser. Teach a righteous man, and he will increase in learning." This is my hope as we've been going through this entire series, that as you've been hearing and listening to this, that you will choose to be wise. And you will realize that if there's corrections, things in your life that you need to fix, you will be a wise man, you will be a righteous man, so that you will increase in your wisdom, you will increase in your learning, and you will do what is pleasing and honoring to God. And that is a sign of love, a sign of support, a sign of encouragement that we can do the things God has called us to do because he loves us, he corrects us, and he calls us as a church to love and to correct each other. So can we do that? Can we be humble enough and loving enough to speak the truth in love, to help each other through this? Last passage, then we'll quickly wrap up here. It says, "Whoever loves discipline loves knowledge, but he who hates reproof is stupid." All right, so don't be stupid. Let's love discipline. Let's love knowledge. Let's realize we need help. That allows us to have that humility, that I don't know everything, that I am going to make mistakes, I am going to mess up. And so how can we course correct? How can we then fix that through proper love and correction? Two quick biblical illustrations of this, and then we'll conclude. One, we have the prophet Nathan confronts David with his sin with Bathsheba. Now, correcting a friend can be difficult. We can lose their relationship. We can suffer strain there by having to correct or call somebody out on their sin. To go and confront the king of the land with egregious sin is even more bold, but is also that much more loving. Nathan could have been executed on the spot for his correction of calling out David on his sin. But he was being obedient to God and loving David enough to speak the truth in love, to see there be correction. Later then in the New Testament, we see Paul having to correct Peter. Peter was fearing man over fearing and being obedient to God. And so he was showing favoritism and not associating with Gentiles as he was with the Jews. And so Paul has to call him out on that sin, on his disregard, on his backsliding into Judaism and having there be a separation between Jew and Gentile. But once again, Paul, being obedient to God and loving to Peter, is able to call and correct that out. And Peter does. He course corrects. Once again, that is a sign of true faith and true obedience. We can't be afraid that if we tell somebody that they're doing something wrong, once again, it's biblical, we're doing it in love. If they are a genuine believer, hopefully sooner rather than later, they will realize that. They will be convicted by that. They'll be encouraged through the power of the Holy Spirit to course correct. But sometimes we just have to be the one loving enough and bold enough to speak that truth in love. This is why also we see the church call out in church discipline, where we are to handle matters hopefully on a one-to-one or a small group of people, calling someone out on sin, encouraging them with that. But then if not, we are to bring it in front of the whole church so that the whole church can be praying for that person and can make sure that we're giving the proper correction and guidance for whatever sin is in that person's life, for their benefit and for the benefit and testimony and witness of the church, that we do not allow that type of sin be inside the church. And so that's, once again, why church discipline is an important component of any healthy church. So with all this, as we kind of wrap up our looking through the book of Proverbs on being loving, realize it's a command. We are commanded to love. So do you fear God, and are you willing to obey him in all his commands, even that of loving each other? Next, if we're doing that, then let's put love into action. We can't say we love God and we hate our brother. We can't say we love people and not actually do anything to prove it. Once again, it's going to wax and wane from day to day with different relationships, right? You're not going to love every single person exactly the same. My hope is you're going to show your love to your spouse different than your love to your children, which is different than your love for someone in the church, is different from the person in the grocery store. But even though there's varying degrees of love, do we still have a love and a concern for how we can help and serve those that God has placed in our lives? And so can we put love into action? Now, love can be put into action by prayer. Love can be put into action by service, right? There's a whole host of ways we can put love into action, but are we at least willing to do it, to consider it, and to work it out? And then finally, an aspect of putting love into action is love enough to correct. Maybe loving yourself enough to correct. Maybe loving a spouse enough to correct the sin in their lives. But if we really love each other, an important component of Christian love is a love of correction. So let's love each other, let's speak the truth in love, and let's do all these things for God's kingdom's sake, for his glory to shine through us as we are imperfect people being made perfect by a perfect God. All right, church, let's love each other and love God. Have a great day.